Good afternoon, everybody. So welcome everybody to today's Practical SME series webinar. I think this is about our 7th in the series, so welcome to everyone. I'm delighted that I've got 2 stars with me. Well, one superstar, one other person.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for letting me in, guys.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, so I'm delighted. I have got. Now, you probably already know her because she is now, I'm not notorious. She's so well known now. The lovely Heather Townsend. She helps professional service firms grow profitably and sustainably. She is the award-winning author of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 books, including The Accountant's Millionaires Club and The Go-To Expert. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you very much, Nikki. What a lovely welcome. Let's just put it this way. I'm blushing underneath my makeup.
Fantastic. I'm just jealous you've managed to write 1 book. So, and as always, we have Mr. Pete Ames to keep us in order. Hi, Pete.
Hi. In future, can I go before the fabulous guest introduction? That's just for
well,
me.
We want people to not switch off.
We do. That's true. That's very, very true. We want to keep them engaged. I don't like saying that, Nikki. Right. So just a couple of housekeeping things to cover off. Those who are used to these webinars now will be familiar with them. Number 1, we are recording this session, so it will be available for you to share with other people or to review in future. So don't worry about trying to get everything down notes-wise. If there's some good pointers, you're going to be able to get them later. And number 2, this is an opportunity. This is not just going to be a presentation. It's a Q&A-led presentation. So you'll be able to ask Heather questions. To do this, we are using the chat. We're not using Q&A. We're using chat. And the reason for this is that the chat defaults to only being visible to myself, Heather, and Nikki. So you can ask any question you want safely without fear of someone else seeing or inferring what's going on in your business. And just to make sure we've all found that, if you move the mouse, chat button appears at the bottom. If you click it, what I would like to do is just in the chat, please pop an answer to this simple question. Do you already have what you think is the makings, the beginnings of a leadership team? Have you got people in the business you think will become your leadership team? Just a simple yes or no. And whilst you're in the chat, could I just ask you to also expand and say, what do you think is the number 1 thing you'd like to see them start doing for them to start taking over some of the pressure for you? So whilst those answers come in, I'll hand back to you, Nikki.
I just saw, thank goodness Donna said yes to that question.
yes. I
thought I'm not answering it. No, I've got a lovely team, but I'm always working on improving it. So yes, today we are talking about leadership team. So whether you are almost there or whether you just you feel on your own and you need to start from scratch, this is what we're here to do to help you with today. Well, in particular, Heather is here to talk to you about. She's been helping me for over 8 years now. And you may think, well, why I'm not further on? No, that's because I don't always listen to Heather.
Not going there.
Whenever I listen to Heather, I do the right thing. So yes, so I'm lucky. I have got a fab team now, and lots of them that Heather has worked with as well, so she knows our team well. So I think we'll just dive straight into our content, chaps. Yes.
Yeah, I think I will say, actually, we've had a little bit, everybody's got the beginnings of the leadership team. But the key things that we're seeing, and I hope we're going to answer today, Heather, is engaging their successors. And a few people talking about being a bit more involved without the owner. So taking a bit more ownership and not having to come scuttling back with questions and double checking things. So do you think we'll cover off the answers to that today?
Oh, definitely.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everybody, for putting that in the chat. Glad to know 100%. You're all with me.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's dive in. So Heather, I know you've told me this lots of times, so forgive me for asking, but want to share this with everybody. What do you mean by you get the team and the staff that you deserve?
And you know what? I hate this phrase because at the point where, and I want to put it out there that this is always a work in progress. There is no such thing as a perfect leadership team. We've had 3 people leave our business in the last year, of which 2 were members of my leadership team. So I just want to put it there that every time you say that, I go, oh, I did that wrong. I did that wrong. But the key thing is that as a business owner, it's your business. So the culture you get is actually normally the worst behavior you'll tolerate. And let's be honest, when you get that new, fresh team member in, they never normally start off bad. You know, they're excited. They're thrilled to be there. But they may turn bad if you don't set expectations regularly, because stuff shifts. You know, my husband says to me, I'm not a mind reader, dear, just tell me. It's the same. Your staff are not mind readers. You know, if we don't explain the bigger picture, if we don't correct or feedback when negative behaviors are happening. So I want to tell you something that actually happened to me. I had a much loved member of staff, but it was a bit Jekyll and Hyde. So in private, I'd suddenly get this ambush of feedback that I was impossible to work with. And I'm a gnat's whisker away from leaving. And I just stood there and took it. Because I was like, oh, well, I've got to cater to safe space. Feedback's a gift. I need to act on it. And yes, there was a message there, but it didn't need to be delivered in that way. And as a result, I never corrected that behavior. So every 2 to 3 months, I had that scenario and I would never sleep at night. But I allowed that situation to happen because I didn't correct that behavior. Now, I needed to hear the feedback, but I didn't need the emotional ambush. I didn't need somebody pointing that emotional gun to my head. But we get the team we deserve because I didn't correct that. Now, the next thing is, but if you're not motivating your team or developing them to have the skills you require, is it any surprise that they will leave? And this is the thing, you know, what is that phrase that goes, if we develop them, they may leave. If we don't develop them, that's even worse. You know, in my organizational design days, a lot of the stuff I was asked to do was, we've got a concrete layer of managers. And actually, it's really important to realize where your leadership team comes into your growth as a business. So if you've got to turnover about 250K, in most businesses, it's going to be you plus a number of people up to 5, unless, of course, you're running a retail or a hospitality outlet. As soon as you go above that 5, you're going to be getting over 250K. That's the point where you need to start to build a leadership team. And the importance of that leadership team is they are your first frontier for building the culture. And I've said this to you many times, Nikki, you now can't drive this firm by the sheer force of your personality. You're too big for that.
I try.
You know, I know you try really hard.
But yes, you're right. It doesn't work. I can't do that. I can't sort out getting in all the revenue every month anymore. It's too many mouths to feed. Can't do it on my own.
And this is why a lot of businesses get stuck between $250,000 and $500,000, unless, of course, they're e-commerce and whatever, and they get a high turnover. It's because they don't get this leadership team established who will take the weight, but who will be those standard bearers of this is how we behave, this is how we act in the business.
Okay, absolutely. So now this is a bit of a problem. This got a very key word in here. How do you get the patience to do all of this good leadership and management stuff? So especially, you know, if you're tired because you were doing so many different things and you just want to say, sort it out, you know, how do you develop the patience to get this all to work?
And you know what, you and I, Nikki, one of the things that we both lack is patience.
Mm-hmm.
and I think what we've got to remember that if you've got your business to this point where having a really strong leadership team is a key priority for you, you've got to realize that you're entrepreneurial, that you're driven. So patience probably isn't your first name, second name, or third name. You know, it's not part of your makeup. So how do you get that patience? Well, part of it is about wisdom and experience. You know, it's that whole, can I influence this? No, I can't. Right. Okay. Let's be patient. But actually, the first person you've got to lead is yourself. You know, I do remember when one of my most recent hires came into my business, I said, what can I do to upset you? She said, you could shout at me. And I never dream of shouting at a member of staff, but there are business owners that do that. It's like, you know, I learned fairly early on with a very, very tantrumy toddler that if I got angry with her, it just fueled it. So the first thing is, I've got to be patient myself. They're not a mind reader. They don't know what's going on in my mind. So the first thing I've got to do is I've got to look after myself. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about self-care. Am I getting enough sleep at night? And I'm telling you now, everything seems better with a good night's sleep, particularly if you've got a team that you want to chuck out the window. Everything is better with a good night's sleep. And in fact, it's so important, a good night's sleep. At the moment, a number of my journaling questions, morning and evening, are all about how do I optimize getting that good night's sleep? The next thing is, are you actually eating nutritious? I used to say good quality, and then people say, well, I'll have a better glass of red wine then. No, we're talking about actually good, new quality, nutritious food that actually your body likes and needs to do it. Because, you know, as I said, I'm not perfect. You know, I only discovered a month ago that I've been anemic for 9 months. And I thought my diet was pretty good. Anybody that sees my Instagram feed knows that my diet's pretty good. So there's an element of, are you actually looking after yourself? Are you getting enough exercise to dissipate all those stress hormones that are built up in your body, to help you get that clarity of mind, to help you get a perspective? Because now that so many of us are not working in the same room as our leadership team, it's really easy to go, oh, they're useless. Why don't they listen to me? Why doesn't this happen? And that small voice of doubt. So I find exercise gives me a lot of perspective. And then the last habit is about recharge time. If you're just completely wedded to your business, you cannot get perspective. You cannot actually put the distance between you. You know, and a lot of us, because of lockdown, actually got to the point where we just went full on into our business because that's what was needed. And all of those extra things that we did stopped. And if you haven't, now we're coming out of lockdown, what are you doing that's not your business, that gives you a sense of perspective? I'm learning how to sew. I could introduce you to Delilah.
Yeah.
Yes, I could introduce you to Delilah, my filled out mannequin that's half dressed at the moment, but she's out of the room. Her starring moment will come later. My daughter can't believe that I've named my mannequin Delilah, but we'll leave that one there. I'm an embarrassing mother. What can I say? But what happens when you're tired? You go back into your comfort zone. You don't try new ways of working. Anxiety can take hold, and particularly if you're not working alongside your leadership team, it's so easy to go, they just haven't done anything today, and actually they've done a lot. And often you can assume the worst about your staff and what's not getting done. So important is, if you're going to build the right leadership time, you've got to be a role model to them about what you want to need from them, but a role model to yourself. Are you looking after yourself? That means headspace and time in your diary to think, because if you're just going full on at it and you're not giving yourself reflection time, review time, planning time, you are going to come out thinking that your leadership team were the worst thing that you ever had, and you can't give them the direction they need.
Yeah, well, I always think it's your own responsibility if you're saying that, because you're the one that hired them. But so sort of leading on from that, Heather, you've mentioned to me before about psychological safety. So can you just explain to us what is psychological safety?
So there was a 2-year research study done at Google. I can't remember whether it was just done at Google or they were the ones behind it, but they were looking at it. What is the key ingredients that makes a high performing team? And if any of you are used to traditional leadership theory rather than the stuff with the neuroscience slant on it, you'll go, oh, well, it's purpose and it's common ground and it's communication. It's none of that. No, it's none of that. It's actually that essence that people can feel that they can speak up safely. And it all comes down to how the brain works. And often it comes back from our track record at school. Now, if you're anything like me at school, you were kind of a bit of the odd one out. You know, I didn't have the green hair, but I was the bright, swatty one. I was the one that knew the answer. You know, I wasn't the cool kid. I definitely wasn't in with the it crowd. You know, I was the one that had my own dress style. I still have my own dress style. But I did learn that actually there were times when I should shut up. There's times when I shouldn't say anything. And so we often get this behavior where we learn from school that most of the time we shouldn't say what's on our mind for fear of bullying, retribution, blame, the messenger being shot. And we often take that fear, it becomes so ingrained from our school days that we take that into the workplace. And, oh, well, I couldn't say that because it would really upset them or I'll get shot. So going back to the example of that former team member that used to ambush me with feedback, there wasn't psychological safety there for me to turn around and go, hang on a minute, this is not how we deliver feedback. So it does work two ways. But the things to notice is that very much so, what people may say to their peers in their team, they may not say to you. I remember one example where I'd done a quarterly review with a member of my team. Anything, and I'd done the how can I help you, anything that's on your mind, how's it going, and everything's fine, yeah, really enjoying it. I then discovered 2 days later she's ranting to one of my team going how fed up she was, how stressed she was, how she's working really long hours. And you're like, hang on a minute, that doesn't match what I'm hearing. That's because that psychological safety wasn't there. So it's really important, if you are to move your business forward, if you're to have that high performing leadership team, that they can tell you openly to your face, of course, in the appropriate way, not as my previous colleague used to do, but where there are things that are broken that need to be fixed, particularly if it's your behavior. And very often we go back to that fundamental question that we started it. You get the team you deserve. And my leadership team now is, every time I sit down with them, I feel as if I've got 3 people backing me up that are on side. Hi, Donna, I'm not just saying it. It really is. And Donna's on the call. But I really feel as if there's 4 adults in the room that are all working towards the same purpose. And all 3 of my leadership team will tell me to my face where I'm being a prat. And that's when you've got really good psychological safety, where you've got that level of respect, but you've got that feedback when things are not working, when they're broken.
So how can you make sure that that psychological safety is there for your team then? So, you can say it, and obviously, there's a scenario, and I can think of a couple of scenarios in our team as well over the years where, one day they're saying absolutely lovely things, and the next minute it's, oh, actually, I'm thinking of leaving. How do you make sure that it is a safe space, that they're saying what they really think, but in a sensible, nice way?
Yeah, and I think the first thing is never shoot the messenger, because how often do we decide to go back to old school leadership theory, because good management is don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution type thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to get psychological safety, is it? Because you've already told them, I don't want to hear the problem, I want you to hear the answer to the problem. And actually think about it, if they already have the answer, are they likely to come to you? And we have to remember that if they're bringing you a problem, they need to talk about it. So the first thing is, don't shoot that messenger. The next thing is, if they make a mistake, don't get annoyed with them. We've had it where, say, handovers have slipped and we've lost clients. The reality is, me getting annoyed is not going to bring that client back. So my adage is always, right, what has happened. What can we learn from it? What do we need to put in differently? And I will always have their back and always say to my team, tell me about it. I want to hear the warts and alls. But too often we don't. We almost train them not to tell them about their mistakes by our behaviors. If you get angry with them, if you send the caps lock, the message in caps lock with lots of exclamation marks and angry faces, how likely do you think they're going to come and tell you when they think they've got a problem? No, yeah. They're not. And so the other thing is, when people speak up with these problems, we often don't give them time to speak up. Or we go, oh, not now, it's not important. Or, I can't believe you're moaning again, Pete. What are you like? And we don't.
I'm very like that.
Yeah, like and that. We don't. And actually, I always remember my mother telling me about how to deal with my daughter. So my daughter, she's now 14. I love her to bits, but at the age of 2 was the toddler from hell. The serious toddler from hell. And she basically rebalanced the fact that my eldest child never had a tantrum. Never, ever tantrum. I mean, he cried for 2 hours when he lost his teddy, but that was it. He never, ever had a tantrum. So we kind of rebalanced it. And my mother said to me, she said, look, you're just going to have to praise her for normal behaviors. If she just does something which you would expect, that's not a good behavior, just keep praising her, keep praising. And it's the same with your team. Keep praising them for the good stuff. Keep praising them when they're doing what you like. Never, ever stop going, I'm really grateful. This is excellent. Of course, unless it's not excellent, and then you're just colluding in some negative behaviors. And then the last thing is, you need to be vulnerable. you need to role model that vulnerability. Now, I'm not mentioning what happened to me at the swimming pool yesterday, which I'm not saying, but it was a costume malfunction that you really don't want. I'm not talking about that level of vulnerability. What I'm talking about is, yeah, that happened, sadly. What I'm actually talking
that wasn't in the LinkedIn post.
No, this is a professional, but we're amongst friends, aren't we? What I'm actually talking about is, being open about your weaknesses, actually telling them where they bring extra into your team, how they support you. I openly talk about, we've got 2 integrators in our team that are not client facing. We could not run the business without them. They are the 2 that I'm most likely to send gifts through in the post to say thank you. And I say to them, I can't do this. In fact, if you speak to both of them, they know I can't do it. And they laugh about it as well, that I can't do it. But it is about really showing your vulnerability, being the first person to go, this is where I think it's broken, and this is my part in it. Too often we blame somebody else, whereas actually we need to really understand, what part am I playing? Even when I was getting emotionally ambushed, my part was, I didn't say, hang on, this is not how we talk to each other. I didn't say, hang on, saving up a whole 2-page essay of what you think is wrong is a problem. This stuff should be talked about a lot earlier.
Absolutely. I mean, hands up. Generally the team are good at coming and telling me things. As Alicia said to me, it's only right once in the 3 years that I get angry, so that's not too bad. But the thing is, as you're growing as well, you do find things that need more work on and need full thorough processes, so that you can have that common standard going through. And that is exactly what we're doing at the moment. Wherever we're seeing there is a niggle in any stage of the process, there's no point getting stressed about it. Let's look at the process, write it up, make sure we've got the right process, the right people involved, and do the right training. And then if it still goes wrong, then I might be angry. But yeah, super. So now this is one I feel I'm getting a lot
Nikki.
better. We got.
Should we stop for Q&A here? We've had questions coming in, so I'm gonna fling myself in the middle of this.
Let's do that.
Excellent. Okay, so
do some Q&A.
Q&A time. It's interactive. If anybody does have questions, please fire them in. We have time, and then we'll have time at the end as well. Heather's even been agreed to hang on for 15 minutes if needed to make sure every question gets answered. So somebody has asked, when it comes to that psychological safety, understanding what's really going on, that seemed to trigger a few questions. The reality versus whether you're hearing just what you want to hear. Someone said, should you make everybody give a negative comment about the business or about you? Is that a good way to start getting a real picture of what's going on?
I don't know. I think that's a good way to get into therapy very quickly. We have a concept of broken windows. What needs to be fixed? So I'm always asking people, how can I help you do your job better? What can I do in my remit to help it be easier? I'm an ex-Tesco employee, so I'm always talking about better, simpler, cheaper. Such a great phrase, but I'm asking people for negative, and language is really, really important, because negative already puts your brain into a threat state. When your brain is
constructive.
It's and I'm not being pink and fluffy here. Language really matters. Whereas if you talk, as soon as we go into negative, your brain goes, your limbic system fires up, you get adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol fire into your body, your heart rate rises, your blood pressure rises, your breathing rises, your blood goes away from non-essential organs like digestion and fertility to essential organs to help you ready for that fight or flight. You become really tunnel focused on what you perceive as a threat. So that word negative already is just potentially spun that off. And if you're having a bad day as a business owner, imagine 6 people coming up with negative things about your business. Whoa, I'm already reaching for, where's my psychiatrist's phone number? So I'd really reframe how you talk about it. I talk about it as, how do we improve? What's broken? Where have we got these broken windows? What should be on our priority list? There's still ways of saying what's not working, but they've got a far more positive slant. Because as soon as we talk about negative, we're making a judgment. We're making a judgment on people's competence. Now, these people may have been working the best and the hardest, and we're just saying negative things about it. We have to remember that people care really deeply. So the choice of words is so important.
I was once told, thank you, Heather. Hopefully that has answered the question for the person who asked it. If not, please pop it in the chat and I will bring it back to Heather. Someone once told me that they worked somewhere and they had a stop, start, more mechanism for feedback. So you ask, what would you like me to stop doing? What would you like me to start doing? And what do you want me to do more of? And I always thought that was quite nice as a way of doing it.
I've come across that before.
Yeah, it's quite a common one. Stop, start, continue. Yeah.
Stop, start, continue. Because it's neutral. It's neutral, and the more ends on a positive note, doesn't it? So, yeah, I like that, reframing the context of the question. Someone else asked, again, on this theme of getting to the truth of what's going on. You mentioned that someone mentioned to you, and I think this is what triggered their question. Someone told you that someone was saying something very different to what they were saying to you in your meetings. Should you engage with your staff and ask about other people's opinions to confirm what's going on? It struck me as a question. I think it was because it feels dangerous, but does it get to you the truth faster?
Yeah, it's your business. And I think as a business owner, we get tied up in this whole emotional of I can't, it's going to undermine, I should not. It's your business. If any of your teams start pressing the alarm bells because you are looking into what they're doing and how they're doing it, there is a problem there. They do not respect that it's your business. And actually, typically, if you get an out of proportionate response to that conversation of I'm just trying to find out what's going on, then they're hiding something. And as a very good employment lawyer, my good friend Annabelle Kate said to me, 50% of the time, they're either stealing time from the company or they're stealing money. If you get a significant out of proportion response for you just investigating, is the job being done to the level I want it to be done? And so, yeah, you have every right to do that. And we forget this because we get told by our management team, you need to let us do our job, keep your nose out of it, we'll get on and do it. Well, actually, if you've got significant concerns, it's absolutely your right to do that and ask that. And I was brought up on this concept of management by walking about. Well, sadly, we can't do management by walking about if a lot of us are working virtually. And we can't do and my door is always open, because a lot of people, when they're working virtually, kind of go, oh, Nikki's really busy, I can't disturb Nikki. We build up that story that we can't tell us. So we have to role model what we want to do, which means we've got to set up some of those communication channels. How are you hearing what's really going on? Because very often what we hear is going on is when it gets to the point of conflict. Oh, so-and-so's not doing that. So-and-so won't do that. I can't get that, and actually, that is unhelpful, because then you have to unpick what really happened, what somebody thinks happened, and what the other person happened, when actually all we need to do is just sort it. So it's really important that you know that you can go and speak to anybody in your business, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're paying their wages, and that you don't feel that afraid to do that. And if you get in that out of proportion response and telling you to shove off, you've got to investigate further.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's the common thing, that when you actually go behind these big companies going wrong and things get massively getting out of hand, it's usually several layers of management all putting a spin as it works its way up. So you should go down. You should go down to the bottom. No, I love that. So somebody made an observation that in a small business, there is something inherently urgent about the nature of that business. You've got to make decisions quickly. There's opportunities. You've got to chase them quickly. And I think they were asking, how do you shift from that mindset of urgency, quick, make a decision, to that patience mindset that you were talking about when it comes to dealing with people?
And it comes down to business planning. Very often, we don't do that business planning in enough depth. So as a business owner, we're too in the trenches, we're being too reactive. So everything does become urgent. And look, I realized that 18 months of COVID, it's the never like we've had before. And we as a business, we turned around and said, right, we've got to we're facing Armageddon, half of our business. So I'm not sitting here going, oh, I'll come back very shortly. I'm not sitting here going, we had a really easy time of it. And there was a good 6 weeks where I worked 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours, sorting stuff out, remodeling the business so it met the needs of our clients. but actually very often, but that sort of thing should only hopefully happen once in a lifetime. Too often we don't have the planning time, we don't have the review time, so we get caught up in this firefighting, everything's urgent, oh, there's an opportunity to chase down, because we don't have the framework properly embedded. We don't know what the good opportunities to chase down look like, so we chase everything, so we get into initiative overload. And I think that's my key steer. And look, if you're sitting here listening and you're a business that's anything under 500,000, it's really difficult to grow, because we're facing squeezed profit margin, lack of cash flow. So everything has to be done slightly on the cheap until you've got that well-established leadership team that can take the stuff off you. And as a result, because there's so many demands on your time as you go, particularly from about 100 to 500,000, it does feel like everything seems to be urgent, because you can only do so much. And for me, how do you get that balance of patience and urgency? So business planning is one of them. Two, actually, this is where coaching can help give you that sense of perspective. You know, I've got clients talking to me going, oh, I need to win new business. I'm like, you can't win any new business because you haven't got the resource to do it. Oh, I need to. No, your priority has got to be this, this, and this. And then you can open the taps. And sometimes working with an external coach, or somebody like Nikki, who is a very, very good professional advisor, having been there, done that, made most of the mistakes herself 3 times over, can give you that perspective to get the balance between that doesn't matter right now. What really matters is this. And I think that's how you get that balance between patience and urgency.
Yeah. So essentially, you will always be urgent and do something active to try and compensate for that. Because you can't just do it yourself. No, great answer. So we've had a question, which I think is going to lead us very nicely into the next subject.
Yes, in fact, I think if it's the one you're thinking of,
it is the one I'm thinking of.
Asking my next question.
Nikki, do you want to take it from me?
Yes. So it was. I will actually read it as per how the question's been written by the
individual.
What is it? Individual. That's it. Here it is. So he says, how do you know when it is the right time to delegate to your management team and hover over the business?
And this all depends on where your business is at. And it also depends on what your business is facing. And I know that sounds strange, and it sounds like I've just answered, it depends. So typically somewhere between 250 and 500,000, you're going to need to build a leadership team up around you, because you just don't have the time to be the glue that holds it all together. So one of the big kind of key factors is, do I have enough time to do what I should really be doing? And if you don't, then you need to be delegating more or do things differently. So that's one of the other things. The other thing is about the competence of your team. So for example, I know Donna's listening. Donna came into the business to run a recruitment arm for us. Donna knows her stuff. Donna is excellent. Donna's run businesses beforehand. My role is to get out of her way and be a sounding board. If I hovered, I'll be told by Donna very, very quickly to naff off. Might be slightly stronger language. That's called psychological safety in practice. But Donna is highly, highly competent. And so, of course, that needs to happen. But if you've got somebody quite junior that's maybe done a big step up, you're going to have to hover a bit more, because there isn't that competence level there. So it really depends on how good your management team is and what the business demands from you. So we're moving into a point in our business where it's a long struggle to get me out of being so chargeable. And we'll get there. We're 2 people away from that point, to me sort of starting to drastically reduce some of my chargeable time. But actually, that's going to take me, another year. It was meant to be this year, but as I said, I'm human. We've had 2 people come and go, which are part of the leadership team, which keeps getting me pulled back in. So just realize that this isn't it should happen now or it should happen then. It's about what state is the business in, what are your immediate needs, and what is the competence and capability of the team beneath you.
Absolutely. Heather, just to be aware, you've probably noticed your angel is back.
No, I haven't, because I don't have self-yawn, so I should just get rid of my angel.
Your angel's appeared again. There we go. Lovely. I don't know why that happens. Very bizarre.
No.
Yeah. So delegation. So we're trying, we normally think, right, we want to have as much delegation as possible from the leadership team. But when do the business owners actually should let there be still some upwards delegation?
So let's look at the reason why, what the mistakes business owners are making, and then let's think about some of the when should there be upwards delegation. Now, particularly if you're in professional services or a knowledge-based business, this is a classic mistake where I talk about we drink our own Kool-Aid. I am the global expert on what it takes to make partner. We can't put anybody else in to run it's now 12 lessons because they want me, the expert. You know what? That's only going to get my business so far, that attitude. But we often do that. Oh, only I can do that. And actually we have to go, how can I help somebody else do that? Next thing is we often dump, not delegate. So what do I mean by dumping? Where we go, Nikki, can you take over this? Nikki goes, yes. And we go, right, that's off the list. Right, let's move on to the next thing. Whereas actually we've not checked their understanding. We've not checked, particularly if they're maybe not as competent as we'd like them to be, that how they're going to start to do it. We've not checked timelines, deadlines. We've just done the classic, whoa, off my desk, onto Nikki's desk, tick, move on. And that is the problem. We've got to delegate properly. That means a proper brief, that needs proper expectation. Now, of course, if you've worked with them for years and they know they can read your mind, which Lisa and my team can, there doesn't need to be that strong a brief, but actually we often do that. The next thing is, because we're often running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, that everything is always urgent in a small business, we don't leave enough planning time to delegate. So this weekend, I found myself, we had a good idea in the team leadership meeting, and I found myself at the weekend spending 3 hours rebuilding landing pages. Now, I've not done that for ages and ages and ages. And I was like, that was 3 hours of my weekend. And the reason why? Because I hadn't made the time to delegate, because I was once again chasing down an opportunity, once again being reactive. And when it gets to that level of urgency, you fall into the trap of it will be quicker to do it myself. And yes, there's always going to be times where you have to do it yourself. Maybe somebody's off, whatever. But the most time it's think about, could somebody else do that? So the next thing is upwards delegation. How does that happen? So let me describe what that is. It's where your team come to you and go, Nikki, can I just offer some help with this? And you go, yeah, of course. And then you end up solving it completely for them. And you feel good because you've helped them. They feel good because they've got an answer. The next time they don't know the answer, they go, oh, I'll go to Nikki. She's really helpful. And so this persists. So suddenly you've got this upwards delegation where you've trained them. If they've got a problem, they'll solve it for you. In fact, one of our former members literally found that they'd come to her and she'd go, oh, it's all right, I'll get it done. Don't worry, you go back and do something else. So literally she was like, why won't my staff take initiative? And it comes back to this thing of, you get the staff you deserve. If your behavior is, I will solve it, I will take it off you, then of course that's what happens. And it's even worse, particularly in knowledge businesses, where you've got the principal of that business owner with such a deep level knowledge. And often when we're small, we can't afford to get in that 100-gram big hitter with equivalent level of knowledge. So we have to buy in somebody that's a little bit junior, someone that's learning on the job. So it's really easy to get into that whole thing of, I'll solve it for you, because it's Kool-Aid again. I'm the expert.
Absolutely. So I think we've really covered, would you say that if we covered how to delegate, the top tips, or is there anything else that we can actually do to make sure that when the next time that, let's say, think of someone, say Jackie, not that very often she asks me a question, but say next time that Jackie comes to me and asks me a question, how can I do that so that it doesn't happen again?
So the first thing is to adopt an ask rather than tell approach. And it's really simple. Don't tell them, ask them. What would they do if they knew the answer? Get them to think about the options and which ones they take or not take. If the emails come from clients or customers, forward them to the right team member with so-and-so will be able to help you. But I think some of the things, I've talked a lot about how to delegate efficiently, and there's a couple of things that I want to add. Back pocket time. Stuff happens. And because stuff happens, this is when we get into that reactive, have to get things done tomorrow, have to get involved. So actually put in that back pocket time. So you've always got a bit of time for if something goes wrong. And then the final thing is, remember, it's the outcome that's more important than necessarily doing it our way. Unless, of course, you've got consistent workflows that are best practice. But actually, it's the outcome that really matters.
Absolutely. So now going into, where you're getting a bigger and bigger team, so you need to make sure you've got the right culture, you've got the right same objectives and everything, and you want to get the right vision, purpose and responsibilities. So when you've got all of the delegation working and everything else out, how do you then get the staff to step out and take even more of the initiative?
So there's things that you have to do first. Remember, I'm going to repeat it again. You get the staff you deserve. You get the team you deserve.
Right, Heather.
I know. Remember, I'm the one that's had more people leave than you, particularly as a percentage. So it hurts me every time I say it, but I cannot repeat it more often.
But you also, sorry, just to interject there, absolutely get people to serve, but it's always, people do go through it. Sometimes there's external things. So you, as the leader, you can't blame yourself for everything. What you can blame yourself is if the person changes or if some behavior occurs, do something about it. Don't put up with it.
Oh yeah, you can't, if someone leaves because they're emigrating to Australia, it's like whatever. But for people to take the initiative, they've got to be engaged with your business's purpose and vision. They've got to know their role and responsibilities. They need to understand the bigger picture and strategy. They need to have measurable KPIs, which you and they review regularly. Otherwise, you're not giving them the context in what to operate. So you're putting too many variables. You're not making it easy for them to step out and take the initiative. And I remember a former member of our team was desperate for the title, loved the idea of the title, but then wouldn't take responsibility for the actions that went with it. Head of sales, you would have delivered a sales forecast.
Some sales?
Yes. Well, it would have delivered a sales forecast. Didn't want to do it. So as a result, he then went through a process of disengaging from our vision to grow a £1 million business. So when he was taking his own decisions, they weren't the right ones because they weren't aligned. They were aligned with his why, not ours. Then, he kept ducking the responsibility. And I see that a lot with small businesses where you've got a staff member that's delivering well on 60% of the role, delivering okay on 20%, and then not touching another 20%. And you need them to do the whole role. And actually, that's a real thing to look for. If you're not getting the whole of this, if you're not getting the whole role done, remember that's what you're paying for. If you've got somebody that, and when I wanted to sit down and measure and what are the KPIs, I didn't want to do that. These are all red flags for somebody that's not engaged with your business. So you've got to have somebody engaged as that kind of platform.
Yeah. Although what I would say is more and more, as it is really difficult sometimes in certain roles to recruit, is I've been more looking at very more specific skills, so that you might find somebody that's good at one of them but not at the other, and then end up with two half people. Right. So you have in the rest of
I know.
You know what I mean.
You chop them in half and you fill that bit of the role, I'll do that bit of the role. The other halves of yourself don't come into work, you're not needed.
But I was talking to a client today, she's trying to find, she's had a really fantastic member of her team leave. It's set as sales, who was doing like sales admin with office manager joint responsibilities. And she's saying, it's going to be really hard to replace. And I was like, well, don't then get a separate sales admin and an office manager, less hours on both, and then you've got the right person. Because it is, sometimes the two skill sets don't fit for both. Right, before Heather, you've often mentioned rhythm meetings. So can you, for our lovely people out there watching, whether it's live or later on YouTube, etc., what are rhythm meetings? Do we all sit around with a drum? What's going on?
Yeah, well, if you want to. And so
sounds like a groovy meeting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So rhythm meetings are something that's come really out of the Rockefeller habits. It was inspired by the Rockefeller habits, which are a set of standard meetings with standard agendas that focuses on ensuring the workflow is happening and keeps your growth plans as a high priority. And I have to say, when people adopt particularly the daily huddle part of the rhythm meetings, we find that they get control of their workflow. They trust that their team are getting done. And what this is putting the structure so you're having the conversations with the right people at the right time. So the daily huddle is where everybody in their operational units comes together. It doesn't need to be more than 5 minutes, where it is about, right, what are you grateful for today? So that puts your brain into a far more positive state. And also, when we do this in our team, you get to know so much more about the team members and you get that glue. Now, we're a fully remote business, so we just do this online. Although with certain members of my team, we check in at 8:45 in the morning. It's more just, oh, can you look through this? Can you, the sort of things that would have naturally happened if we'd been in the same office. But it really is, what are you grateful for? What are you going to get done today? What help do you need to get that done? And it gives you, the business owner, the understanding of, right, what help do they need, so you can stop the constant interruptions and you know where there's going to be problems. Now you can put in more questions, but those are the 3 fundamental questions. You then have the weekly operational meeting where you look at, it depends on how your business runs, but you look at the next rolling 4, 8, 12 weeks, whatever is, and where this is where you get into the nuts and the bolts with those operational team units of what needs to happen to deliver our workload. Where have we got problems? So think about this as management by exception, rather than let's go over each job and see how we're doing. It's actually, if we're green on the traffic lights, don't need to look at it, but it's about, right, where could it go wrong? What's happening? Do we have the capability, capacity in place to deliver? What do we need to do? And then you've got the leadership and all staff monthly meetings. So all staff monthly meetings is about you giving all of your staff an overview of, this is where we're going as a company, this is what we're celebrating, these are our organizational priorities as a minimum. Then with your leadership team, you're looking at, right, what's on our growth plans, what needs to change, what's happening. In our leadership team meetings, we always talk about, right, resource, have we got enough, where are our next priorities, what do they need to be doing? Is anybody struggling? How much support do they need? We'll also look at finances. So where are we starting to dip? Where are we over exceeding on our targets? What changes do we need to make to hit our targets? And typically that is what we're looking at. But we're also looking at our transitional points for us as a team. How do we get our leadership team to run the business? Where does Heather now need to sod off? One of my proudest moments was when my 2 integrators, Lisa and Alison, turned around to me and said, Heather, you're not needed here. You're just making it harder. We can do this. And I was like, yes, I finally achieved. And when your team turn around to you and say, you are not needed here, we don't need you, we will get on much better without you, you know that you finally made it. And then you want to look at quarterly leadership and all staff meetings, which is where we're really reviewing and going, right, what is our one big focus for the next 3 months? What do we as an organization need to do and all align to move forward? So we don't get, as I spoke about earlier, this initiative overload, this feeling of everything's being urgent. And it is about making sure that everybody is aligned to what is our one big focus, what is driving us forward. And with the quarterly rhythms, the monthly rhythms, what you've got is that both the conversation about your growth plans, your business plans, as well as the day-to-day. Otherwise, we just get sucked into the day-to-day. And that's when we start to get frustrated with things.
Excellent. Well, we've been through so much content there, Heather, and I know there's loads more, but I know that we still have some more questions. So I think just in case anyone's got to shoot off, we will answer every single question you've got going. But if you could summarize where we are for anybody that does have to shoot off now, and then we'll go through some questions. And actually, I can see there's 1 or 2 questions in there that I had on my list to ask, save me asking as well. So perfect. So so what would you say are the key points for people that are listening to take away? What are the main takeaways?
I know I'm going to say this phrase that I've said now. This will be the 5th, 6th, 7th that you told me off for. You get the team you deserve. You have to role model. Yeah, really. Yeah.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, you can tell we've worked together for 8 years now. I used to have brown hair, didn't I, when we first started working together? You know, you are the one that sets the direction, that tells them what's expected, that motivates them, that actually also gets out of their way to allow them to step up. The next thing is set expectations. You know, what do you want from them? What is good behavior? What looks like? But also you've got to delegate. Delegate doesn't happen because it's a nice word in a leadership management, you know, dictionary type stuff. You have to change your behaviors and realize I can't do everything. Then you've got to make sure the roadmap is clear. Now you might think it's clear, but they may not. You know, everybody in my business knows we're trying to grow £1 million business because we run the Accountants Millionaires Club. So we have to kind of, you know, walk our talk type stuff. But actually, there's a lot of different ways to get to that end point. So have I actually spent the time with my team? Have I actually told them their role within that? Do they know the critical moves along the way? And that's what we're doing. The next thing is have your KPIs set and your balanced scorecard so that you can measure and monitor. So you've got the dashboard, you've got the reports, that you can see where there are problems. And then finally, building that structured series of meetings. So you've got both the near-term stuff and the far-term stuff being spoken about. Otherwise, we only talk about the near-term stuff.
Excellent. Really good. So Pete, back to you for filling in those questions.
Yes, thank you, Nikki. So for everyone else, we're not going to be officially ending now. We're just going to run the Q&A until we kind of hit the end of it. So if you did ask a question, you need to go before the deadline of 2 o'clock, please let me know and I'll make sure your question comes to the front. So I think following on from what you said, there's your final point there, the regular meeting with the leadership team. This question smoothly fits into that one. How many people should be on a leadership team? And they actually couch that in the form of, you know, as a percentage of the total team, say, but is there an absolute number?
And that was an external question, but I was actually talking to you about that this morning, wasn't I, Pete? So
yeah, and
they must have been listening in.
Guess what? It depends. So as your business evolves, so you start with you as the business, then you add some extra people on. There is going to come a point where you have to separate out the strategic conversation from the day-to-day conversation. Now, for us, it became really clear when we had a number of part-timers that they couldn't afford to have a weekly team meeting anymore. You know, it ate up too much. So at that point, we had 4 people in the leadership team and 1 not. So already we've got 80% of our headcount is leadership team. And that's going to happen at the point where you separate out a leadership team. There's going to be the first person that isn't on it. And you know what? I felt really guilty about that and really struggled with that. But as your business evolves, you've got to think about who do you need running it or running which bit of it to allow you to step back. And typically that will be someone on your leadership team. So within our business, we've got 3 brands. So we've got How to Make Partner. We've got the Accountants Millionaires Club and our young upstart baby, the Accountants Recruiter. So within our leadership team, I've got Donna. Hello, Donna. Who runs the Accountants Recruiter. I've got Ian, who is stepping in to lead the Accountants Millionaires Club and will also lead the next part of the group that will get started next year. I've got Lisa, our chief organizer, who is responsible for making sure the business runs and implementing the plans. And then you've got me, who very much How to Make Partner is my baby, and I will not have anybody take it away from me. And I will not stop drinking my own Kool-Aid. And I know I'm limiting the growth of that business, and I'm very happy with that. It's a definite decision. But it is about making sure that in that leadership team, you've got the people that can give you the right sounding board to take those business planning, long-term decisions rather than necessarily the day-to-day. And you might not be ready for a leadership team. You might only have, you know, enough people that you don't need it. But it is the people that if you were not to be in the business for 2 weeks because you've gone on holiday, that you knew that if you left it to those 3, 4, 5 people, you knew the business would run. Now, you only have to look at the makeup of most boards to kind of go, well, what is the maximum? You know, if you get, in my view, if you get more than 6 or 7 people, and this is small business, we're not talking massive things like Tesco's, but if you get more than 6 or 7 people, it becomes a talking shop. And actually, have you got some of the lower level there that you don't really need? At the end of the day, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's about, have I got the right people in the room to have the right conversation? And if you've got people wanting to talk about operational stuff of how do we put this event on? they're not the right people for most of us in our business.
I think that's a very comprehensive answer, and hopefully the person who asked it's answered it for them. If they have any further questions, as ever, please pop them in the chat and I'll throw them to Heather.
And with 6 or 7, I don't have to kick anyone else out
yes.
yet. Yeah. So that's a relief.
Yes. If you ever do, I'm envisioning sort of one of those reality TV show scenarios. They're on a beach, everyone's around a fire, you have to walk off. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
this thing goes round and
yeah.
Who is up for eviction this week?
Really drags out the weight. So another question that came in, relating again to the leadership team. This came from someone I think who has bought businesses in the past, but I guess it's not just that. Sometimes you can be promoted into a position of leadership as well. But what happens when you inherit a team rather than sort of build your team as you go? How do you handle when it's not quite right?
So I don't think there's an easy first answer to this. But I think what you've got to realize is that whenever you see a business being bought, there's a reason why key personnel have golden handcuffs around them for a number of years as part of the deal to ensure they stay in the business. The reality is that very often the people that you inherit have a completely different purpose and why to the buyer of the business, because they were building something else. They may not have been there to be bought, and suddenly they've got a different way of working, a different culture being imposed on them. And let's be honest, it is being imposed on them. They are just kind of collateral in the midst of the firing line. And this is why we often see such a great, brain drain after a business has been bought. So I want to put that context there. And the reason why I'm saying that is don't assume that everybody is going to be there for the long term and expect that you'll get some fallout. So what are the first things that you need to do when you inherit this leadership team? You need to get some one-on-one time with each member of them. Why are they there? What really makes them tick? What's their driving purpose? You can ask them what's their view on the deal and the fact they're being bought. Are you going to get an honest answer? I don't know. It's a question, but the first thing you've got to understand is what's their why? What's their purpose? What are they motivated? And actually, does that match with where you want to take the business? Because if that doesn't match long-term with where you want to take the business, then you've got a succession plan that needs to happen probably quicker than you may have actually seen it. That can be a compromise out, which is why you often see board members moving on very quickly after a buy has happened. Or it could be that you have an adult conversation with, well, I need you to help establish this, and then I will give you an honourable exit. And of course, this has to be done with employment law advice and all of this sort of stuff. But you have to be having adult conversations with that leadership team. Now, it's always worth going to that leadership team to saying, what should we preserve? I know that sounds weird, but just think about it. There's been this great party going on. Now, everybody thinks it's a great party. Nobody's really realised that the white wine is warm. Nobody's realised that the sausage rolls have gone a bit off. But everybody thinks it's a great party. And somebody's come along and said, right, we're changing the music. We're going to do this now. But that's what it feels like when somebody grows the business. Suddenly, everything was great about the party. How dare they come in? So the first thing you want to do is be really sensitive to their feelings and go, right, what do we need to keep? What is absolutely great about this business? What was the reason why we bought you in the first place? And what is the very essence that we should at all costs aim to keep? And that's part of those conversations shared individually and as a team. We need to acknowledge what has gone before, praise what has gone before, make sure that people don't think, oh, well, they're not bothered about what I think. They're not acknowledging all the hard work I put, because as soon as somebody thinks that they're not important to you, they're not appreciated, they're not recognized or valued, they'll be talking to that headhunter quicker than you can say a quick thing. If they've just been bought, they're probably still talking to the headhunter anyway, unless they've got golden handcuffs. If that's so, they're busy doing their networking ready to exit. And if you take a viewpoint that the thing you're buying, most people will think of exiting, that is a really good starting point, because then you won't be surprised. And actually, it also means you're going to work doubly hard to get to know these people, to get to engage them, to realize that they're not taken as a given. They haven't been bought. You've bought the business, you've not bought them personally. So you need to spend the time to getting them alongside. Do they need them? I'm going to come back very shortly. Do they need their remuneration package looked at? And I'm not meaning just bunging them more money. Is there things about how they can get more involved? Where have they got ambitions that were maybe being kept, pushed down by the previous owner? You know, how can you get them on side? What's motivating them? And then it's about the short-term plan and the long-term plan. So what needs to happen the next week to move forward together? What needs to happen in the next month? Then what needs to happen in the next 3 months? And then it's about, how do I keep a dialogue going with these people? I'm a great believer in the Shackleton phrase of keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So what's going on in their teams? What's going on? How are they doing things? And it's how can you promote psychological safety with them? Hopefully, I think it was a question to Nigel that's given you a viewpoint.
Yeah, he says it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Nigel's had to dip out as well, hence saying thank you for the good webinar.
Perfect timing.
There was one question that came in when you were talking about that member of staff who were disengaged, starting to disengage. And someone asked off the back of that, should you cut or should you try and pull them back in? Which is the smart choice?
You know what? There isn't a smart choice. This is a bit like there's a rock and a hard place. Recruitment is expensive. Even if you work with the lovely Donna at the Accountants Recruiter, recruitment is expensive. Opportunity costs, if it doesn't work out, even though Donna has a great, 96%, 98% still there within 1 year, 96% was 2 years. There's still massive costs of bringing them in, getting them to learn the systems, all the emotional journey. The best thing you can do is actually re-engage them. Now, you may find that there isn't a way to re-engage them, at which point you have a choice. You either then have to micromanage until you know they leave, because they will leave eventually. You have to micromanage them because they are not, that when their commitment becomes low and when they disengage, their commitment is low, they will need to be micromanaged. That process is a ball ache. And normally, if you know they're not engaged and they're not in it for the long haul, they know they're not engaged and in it for the long haul, they will normally leave before you have to then move into performance management. But you do need to literally dog their every step. Are you delivering on this? How are you doing with that? What's on your list? It has to be micromanagement. Now, you could sit there and go, can't be doing that. And you can speak to an employment lawyer and you can do a compromise agreement rather than having to, because at that point, you don't have a capability or misconduct issue. So you can go down a compromise agreement, bung money at it and do it. But typically, if you don't have to, your aim is to re-engage. Now, there is a point where actually letting them go and not having too much of a party when they leave because it's irresponsible is the right thing to do. So for example, if you know that actually say for example, you brought on a new team member and it becomes obvious in the first 3 months that they're not there for the long haul, you're better to cut your losses there and then. Not everyone is worth saving. Say for example, if you know that you've got somebody in the organization that say desperately wants to step up, but where every opportunity you've given them to step up, they won't take, they want the name, they're chasing the status, the role, not the whatever. Actually, it's painful, but let them go with dignity and don't kind of cry too much. It is about going, right, if somebody's disengaging, what is my continuity plan? We're always looking, it's one of the things we talk about as a leadership team is where are we exposed? Where are we exposed? Where have we got the risks? And some of the big strategic moves that we made in the last year have literally come from those conversations. There are 2 programs that we introduced to club members to help keep our members engaged that came as a result of that. Where are we exposed? We have brought extra people into the business to mitigate where we were heavily exposed on one person.
Yeah, the old what happens if someone wins the lottery conversation. I prefer the lottery to the bus.
Yes, we always talk about the bus, which is the wrong way to do it.
I like the lottery. It's a
that's a good point. Yeah. But I was just going to say that sometimes it is the best thing when it's more of a on the offense. I've had the times where I've managed to salvage the situation by giving them like a sabbatical and then they come back a different way. Or sometimes, let them go. And, if you do actually really still believe in the person, you say the door's always open and then you never know, they might come back again. But with a fresh perspective, because they'll appreciate you even more.
Yeah. I think what's important is when somebody goes, to really think about, would I hire them again? And if the answer
it's always
is no,
asked on the references. That's tricky.
Yeah, but there's the references and there's the references type stuff. And most of the people that have left my business, I would hire again, sometimes in a different role.
Yes.
And you have to remember that very often we have the right people doing the wrong roles. And sometimes putting them in the right roles will help them excel. And often, if you're asking them to do something that doesn't play to their strengths, that is when you start to see the negative side of them and they disengage.
Absolutely. Pete, any more questions, or are we there?
We are there. No more questions.
We're ready for our, oh no, I think it has had a lunch. I'm then ready for my lunch, and it's time for you to have a sleep, isn't it? After, being up all night with Australia.
Yes, it may or may not be time for another nap. The beauty of running your own business, guys. No one talks about it. You can nap. It's wonderful. Yes, no, we are done. So thank you to everybody in the chat for taking the time to hand the questions. It's been lovely to have you all there. It gets lonely in there on my own, so I appreciate every engagement. And Nikki, do you want to just take us out?
Yeah, so thank you so much to Heather. It's brilliant having you on here. We could have probably done 2 hours because there was so much more we could have talked about today. And I look forward to swapping roles next week in one of your webinars.
Yes, we didn't plan it. We seriously didn't.
No, well, it was just coincidence of dates. But yeah, thank you so much, Heather. It's been fantastic. Anybody that wants to get hold of Heather, well, all three of us, we're all contactable on LinkedIn, and you will be sent the video. Also, all of our old previous webinars and our Friday business broadcasts are all on YouTube if you can't watch live and want to catch up later. Thank you as always, Pete, for keeping us in order.
So, but always a pleasure. Difficult, but always a pleasure.
And just for, I know we have got penciled in. We've got a November webinar lined up, but we always, these webinars are all about what you want. So any suggestions for future webinars or for our short and sweet Friday broadcasts, please do let us know, and we're here to please. So thank you very much to everybody. Have a lovely afternoon, and see you all again soon. Thank you. Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Thank you very much.